It was 6:30 in the morning in a quiet little town near Chicago. The sun had just begun to rise, painting the kitchen window with a soft golden light. Emma Carter, 35 years old, stood by the stove, stirring a pot of oatmeal. Her eyes looked tired, but there was gentleness in every movement she made. On the small dining table sat 2 lunch boxes, neatly packed for her children, Lily, 11, and Ethan, 7. They were still rubbing their sleepy eyes, laughing softly as their mother poured them milk. Emma worked hard, harder than most people could imagine. Once a receptionist at a local clinic, she now did whatever job she could find, cleaning, nursing, even delivering groceries, just to keep food on the table. But no matter how exhausted she felt, she always smiled before leaving home. She kissed her children on the forehead and whispered, "Be good today." She didn't know that this ordinary morning would soon change everything. Morning always started early for Emma. She left home before the sun was fully up, carrying a worn-out bag and a thermos of cheap coffee. Her first job was visiting an elderly woman who needed help with medicine and meals. Emma spoke softly, listened patiently, and smiled even when her back ached from lack of rest. By noon, she would rush to her second job, cleaning small offices downtown. She moved quickly, wiping desks, emptying bins, mopping floors, all while thinking about picking up her children from school. Sometimes, the smell of cleaning products made her dizzy, but she ignored it. She couldn't afford to stop. In the evening, after dinner, she did laundry for neighbors to earn a few extra dollars. The washing machine rattled in the corner while Lily helped her fold clothes, and little Ethan made towers from socks and towels. They laughed, and for a moment, everything felt normal. Emma always tried to hide her fatigue. She would put on a smile even when her eyes burned with exhaustion. "I'm fine," she'd say whenever Lily asked if she was tired. Inside, she worried, about rent, about bills, about tomorrow, but she never let her children see that fear. Their small apartment wasn't much, cracked walls, flickering lights, and a second-hand couch that creaked. But it was home. They ate together, prayed together, and told each other stories before bed. Even though they didn't have much, their home was full of love. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, Emma stood by their bedside, brushing hair away from Lily's face. She looked at them, so peaceful, so innocent, and felt tears rising. Leaning close, she whispered, "One day, things will get better. I promise." The rain came suddenly that night, heavy, cold, and merciless. The streets shimmered under the dim yellow streetlights, puddles forming along the sidewalks. Emma had just finished her last cleaning shift at a small cafe on the corner of Maple Street. Her feet ached, her back throbbed, but all she could think about was getting Lily and Ethan home before it got worse. They walked close together under a small umbrella that barely covered them. Lily held her mother's hand, Ethan clung to her coat, and their steps splashed softly through the shallow water. The night was quiet except for the steady rhythm of the rain. Then, suddenly, a blinding flash of headlights. A car swerved, tires screeching on the wet road. Someone shouted. There was a sharp, terrible sound, metal against metal, a thud, and then, silence. When Emma opened her eyes again, everything was white. The room smelled of disinfectant, the light too bright to bear. Her head spun, and when she tried to move, pain shot through her leg like fire. A heavy cast covered her right foot. Machines beeped quietly beside her. "Mom!" A small voice whispered. It was Lily, her eyes red and swollen. Ethan stood behind her, holding a stuffed bear. Emma forced a smile, even though tears burned her eyes. "I'm okay," she whispered, "Mommy's okay." But deep down, she knew everything had changed. The doctor explained she had a fractured leg and needed weeks, maybe months, of recovery. She wouldn't be able to work. The bills were already piling up, and the rent was due in a few days. A week later, another blow came. The owner of the cafe called. His tone was cold, distant. "Emma, I'm sorry, but during the accident, the cleaning supplies you left behind leaked onto the shop floor. They damaged the wood and the glass wall. The repair estimate is $25,000. Emma froze, gripping the phone tightly. 25,000, she repeated, her voice trembling. I wish it were different, he said. But someone has to pay for it. When the call ended, she sat there in silence. The hospital room seemed to close in around her. Her savings were gone, her body broken, her future uncertain. That night, after the children fell asleep in the visitors' chairs, Emma stared at the ceiling, her eyes empty. The sound of rain still echoed in her mind, the crash, the scream, the darkness. She reached out and touched her children's hands, whispering so softly it was almost a breath. I don't know how to fix this. Tears rolled down her cheeks as the monitor beeped steadily beside her, the rhythm of a mother's heart breaking quietly in the night. The days that followed were heavy and endless. The hospital bills arrived one after another, thick envelopes filled with numbers that made Emma's hands tremble. She wanted to ignore them, but she couldn't. Each one was a reminder of how deep she had fallen. When she was finally allowed to go home, her right leg was still wrapped in a cast. The doctor's words echoed in her head like a warning, you'll need at least 6 weeks before you can walk again. 6 weeks without work meant 6 weeks without money. 6 weeks of wondering how she would feed her children. At home, the silence was louder than the rain outside. The landlord knocked on the door the next morning, his expression hard and impatient. Emma, he said, I've been patient, but rent is overdue. If you can't pay by Friday, I'll have to rent this place to someone else. She nodded quietly, not trusting herself to speak. Her heart sank as soon as the door closed. Lily came to sit beside her, clutching a small drawing she had made at school. Mom, she whispered, are we going to be okay? Emma looked at her daughter's hopeful eyes but said nothing. She simply reached for Lily's hand and held it tight, afraid that if she spoke, she might break. That evening, she tried calling everyone she knew. Old co-workers, her former boss, even distant relatives. Anyone who might lend a hand. But every call ended the same way. I'm sorry, Emma. I wish I could help, they said, their voices full of pity but empty of action. By the time she hung up, she felt completely alone. Later, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at the tired woman looking back at her. Her eyes were red, her face pale, her shoulders slumped under invisible weight. She barely recognized herself. I'm tired, she whispered, her voice cracking. I'm just so tired. The words broke something inside her. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and for the first time, she didn't try to stop them. 2 days later, there was a soft knock at the door. It was Sarah, an old friend from years ago. Sarah hugged her gently and said, I told your story online. People are sharing it everywhere. Emma blinked, confused and embarrassed. Online? She asked. Yes, Sarah said. People care, Emma. Some are sending messages. Some are even donating. That night, her phone lit up with notifications. Messages poured in from strangers across the country. Stay strong, Emma, one wrote. You're not alone, said another. Some even sent small amounts of money, $10, $20, $50, each message carrying a spark of kindness. For the first time in weeks, Emma smiled through her tears. Then, just before midnight, her phone rang again. A calm male voice spoke on the other end. Hi Emma, he said. My name is Ryan. I read about your story, and I think I can help you. Emma froze, clutching the phone to her chest. Her heart pounded as a single thought crossed her mind. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. The hospital room was quiet, filled only with the soft hum of machines and the distant echo of footsteps in the hallway. Emma sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the white walls, her thoughts tangled and restless. Why would a stranger help me? She whispered under her breath. The question lingered in the air like smoke. It didn't make sense. No one had ever helped her without wanting something in return. The next morning, a gentle knock broke the silence. When the door opened, a man stepped in, tall, kind eyes, and a calm voice that immediately eased the room. "Hi, Emma. I'm Ryan," he said softly. Behind him stood two other people, both smiling warmly, carrying flowers and a small bag of fruit. "We're from a volunteer group," Ryan explained. "We read your story online and wanted to help." Emma blinked, unsure what to say. Her instinct was to refuse, to protect herself from disappointment. But before she could speak, Ryan handed her an envelope. "The hospital bills," he said, "they're taken care of. You don't owe us anything. Just get better." For a long moment, she couldn't move. Her throat tightened, and tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. Why would you do this for me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ryan smiled gently. "Because sometimes, people just need someone to believe in them." That night, the rain tapped softly against the hospital window as Emma sat with a notebook on her lap. She opened it to a blank page and began to write slowly, her handwriting shaky but sincere. "Maybe the world is still kind," she wrote. "Maybe I still deserve a second chance." She closed the notebook and placed it on the bedside table, her heart lighter than it had been in months. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel completely alone. A small spark of hope flickered inside her, fragile but real. Weeks passed, and the chill of winter slowly gave way to the soft warmth of spring. Emma could walk again, though she still moved carefully, her leg wrapped in a light brace. Ryan visited often, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just sitting by her side, listening. He never made her feel like a burden. He always spoke with quiet respect, as if he truly believed in her strength. One bright morning, he arrived with a gentle smile and said, "Come on, Emma. I want to show you something." She hesitated but followed, curiosity shining in her tired eyes. They drove for half an hour, the children chattering excitedly in the back seat. When the car finally stopped, Emma looked out the window and froze. In front of her stood a small but beautiful house, with white walls and a blue door. Ryan turned to her and said softly, "This place is yours now." For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her hands trembled as she covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. Lily and Ethan ran out of the car, laughing, exploring the front yard like it was a castle. Emma turned to Ryan, voice breaking. "Why are you doing all this?" He smiled and said, "Because everyone deserves a fresh start." Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Emma began to rebuild. One afternoon, while unpacking boxes, Ryan asked, "What do you want to do now, Emma?" She paused, then looked at him with a shy smile. "I've always dreamed of opening a beauty salon," she said. "A place where women can feel confident again." Ryan nodded. "Then let's make it happen." With his help, and the kindness of people who had read her story, Emma opened her small shop downtown. She named it Emma's Touch. The first few weeks were slow, but word spread quickly. Customers came, not only for her skill but for her warmth. Emma hired 2 women who, like her, were struggling single mothers. She wanted them to feel the same hope she once found. One evening, as she closed the shop, the golden light of sunset spilling across her face, she whispered to herself, "Sometimes, help comes from the people we least expect." And in that moment, she finally believed that good things could last. A full year had passed since that cold, rainy night that changed everything. Emma's life was no longer defined by exhaustion or fear. It was filled with laughter, color, and purpose. Her small salon, Emma's Touch, had become more than just a place for beauty. It had become a place for healing, for stories, for hope. Every Friday, she offered free haircuts to single mothers in the community. Some came in with tired faces and broken spirits, but they always left with new smiles. Emma would chat with them gently, listening without judgment. She knew their struggles, the sleepless nights, the endless bills, the quiet tears. And with every haircut, she felt like she was giving a piece of herself back to the world that once saved her. Lily and Ethan often helped in the shop, sweeping the floor or serving tea to customers. One afternoon, as they worked together, Ethan looked up and asked, "Mom, why do you always help people for free?" Emma paused, then knelt beside him and said softly, Because kindness is something you can never run out of. The more you give, the more it grows. That evening, as the sun dipped low over the town, Emma stood by the salon window, gazing out at the golden light flooding the street. The air smelled of peace and new beginnings. She thought about Ryan, about the strangers who helped her, and about the woman she used to be, scared, tired, but still fighting. She smiled, whispering to herself, "Always be kind. You never know what someone is going through." Because in the end, it wasn't just her life that kindness had changed. It was her heart, her world, and her children's future. So what do you think? Can kindness really change the world? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring English stories.